It was 3:11 a.m. when I heard my own voice call me over the intercom. Not someone like me, not a mimic or echo, but my exact voice, down to the small tremor I get when I've been awake too long. "Kayla," it said, soft and certain, through the speaker above Trauma 2. The problem was Trauma 2 was empty, clean, lights off, curtain drawn. I stared up at the intercom for a full 10 seconds before keying the desk mic. "Who's on comms?" I asked. No reply. I was charged that night. The ER was slow, just a COPD flare, one intoxicated driver in observation, and an elderly man waiting for transport. Quiet nights always feel wrong out here. Too much silence, and the prairie starts whispering things through the ducts. I walked toward Trauma 2 anyway. Habit. Duty. The air in the hall had cooled. Unnaturally so. The condensation on my water bottle turned to frost as I passed the bay doors. When I reached the room, the intercom clicked again. This time it whispered right behind my ear, "Come alone." I froze. Every part of me screamed to move, but my legs wouldn't. Then the crash cart drawer beside me slid open on its own, and the metal laryngoscope rolled out, clanging once on the tile. I turned. The corridor was empty. The security camera caught me standing there, stiff as a post. You can see the intercom light flicker, even though the power feed shows it was off at the breaker. It didn't end that night. For weeks, every time I pulled a double, the intercom would hiss my name right at 3 a.m. The night janitor swore he heard it too, like two voices layered together. The last time, I let someone else check. A new nurse, brave, stupid, or both, stepped into Trauma 2 when the light blinked. She didn't even make it past the bed before the room lights surged white. She came out shaking, nose bleeding, said she saw someone standing where her reflection should have been, wearing my scrubs, my badge. We checked the camera feed again later. Trauma 2's glass window flashed black, like something had moved between the frames. I unplugged that intercom myself. Rule number 1, never answer the intercom after 3 o'clock a.m. if it uses your name. Let someone else verify the room is occupied. Before we proceed to the next rule, take a moment to tell us where you're watching from, your city, your state, or your country. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support truly helps this channel grow and allows us to bring you even more stories. Now, let's continue. You don't forget the sound of a full metal elevator descending by itself, especially when it's the one that leads to the basement morgue. It was 2:40 in the morning. I'd just pronounced a man, oil field worker, blunt trauma, massive internal bleeding. His name was Clay Johnson. Strong man. The kind that looks too solid to ever die. We zipped the body bag and prepped for transport. The elevator down to the morgue is manual. You have to key it from both floors. But the panel light came on by itself. Green, meaning car is on its way up. "Did you call it?" I asked the tech. He shook his head. "Did you?" The elevator stopped, dinged politely, and opened. Empty. Inside, the floor was wet. Not just damp, wet, like it had rained in there. We hesitated. Then something hit the emergency stop from inside the car. A loud, mechanical clunk. The doors stayed open. That's when the body bag twitched. The tech swore. "He's moving." I told him it was post-mortem reflex, but even as I said it, the bag arched like someone trying to sit up. The zipper strained. The whole thing slid halfway toward the elevator, as if pulled. We backed away. The elevator doors shut and went down, taking nothing with them. The panel light blinked out. Facilities checked the security footage later. No one keyed that car. No one touched it. The log registered a call from the morgue floor, 2 minutes before the death certificate timestamp. We retested the system that afternoon. It worked perfectly. But Clay Johnson's body came up again 2 days later. On a gurney, unscheduled. His tag misplaced, like he'd been moved and sent back. They don't joke about that elevator anymore. Rule number 2. Never ride the morgue elevator if it arrives without being called. Wait for the next car. Room 7 isn't haunted in the dramatic sense. It just notices when you stop paying attention. It's the overflow bay near the oxygen manifold. Dark, isolated, easy to forget about. The kind of room that swallows sound. You could hear your own blood moving in your head if you stood there long enough. One night I was covering 2 patients. Septic farmer in room 8, asthmatic kid in room 6. The curtain to room 7 was closed, but I saw shadows moving under it. Just small ones, like someone pacing barefoot. I thought housekeeping had slipped in early. I pulled the curtain back. Empty bed. No mop, no linen cart. As I turned to leave, I noticed footprints. Mud, dark and heavy, crossing from the bed toward the wall where the oxygen ports are capped. Oklahoma clay, red as blood. But the floor mats by the hall were clean. No sign of anyone tracking it in. 30 minutes later, my septic farmer's oxygen line ruptured clean through, as if cut with shears. His SATs crashed. He seized before I could even hit the alarm. While bagging him, I glanced into room 7. The capped valve was open half a turn. No one had touched it. We sealed the room and called maintenance. They said the valve couldn't open itself. But the following week, another nurse found those same clay footprints leading to the same wall. Only difference. That time, they were fresh, still wet, and they stopped just short of the oxygen tap. That was the night we added a padlock to the valve and started logging who entered room 7. Rule number 3. Keep room 7 lights off and its valve locked. If you see red clay prints with no source, relocate your patients immediately. You can smell a tornado before you see it. It smells like iron, soil, and broken wires. The sirens went off at 2:17 a.m. Clear sky outside, full moon over the wheat fields. Drill? I asked. Not scheduled, the charge clerk said. Then every paper on the nurse's station lifted off the counter and hung in midair, weightless, before falling flat again. The intercom snapped on with static, followed by wind. I mean wind, roaring through the speakers. Trauma 1's monitor beeped erratically, heart rate spiking, alarms screaming. The patient, a farmer we'd treated for dehydration, bolted upright and said, "It's here." The ambulance bay doors began to rattle, not from outside but from within, like pressure was building inside the hospital. We ran to the doors, and the glass reflected what looked like a funnel, spinning violently, white against black. Except there was nothing in the parking lot, only in the reflection. The air sucked backward. Someone screamed for help down the corridor, a voice I'll never forget. Then silence. When the lights stabilized, one of the trauma nurses was missing. We found her down by the basement stairwell, unconscious, eardrums ruptured, like she'd been caught in a vacuum. We still don't open the bay doors after dark, not even for drills. That night, the pressure sensor data showed a wind event of 300 mph inside the corridor, nowhere else. Rule number 4. If the sirens wail on a clear night, open the ambulance bay doors and lock them wide until sunrise. Never let the pressure build inside. Sometimes grief has a smell. In our chapel, it's lilies. They shouldn't smell at all. The flowers are silk. But when they do, it means someone's about to die. I'd just come off a code, pediatric seizure, non-responsive. I needed a minute to breathe. So I went to the chapel, sat in the second pew, and closed my eyes. That's when the scent hit me. Heavy, cloying, sweet. Too real, too fresh. The lights flickered and went out one by one until the only thing glowing was the memorial book on the podium. I swear the air thickened, like someone exhaling grief beside me. Then I heard a sigh, right next to my ear. A woman's sigh. Soft, tired. And I wasn't alone anymore. When I opened my eyes, the memorial book was open to a fresh page. The pen beside it was capped, but there was writing there, my maiden name in neat cursive. I stared at it until I couldn't blink. I hadn't used that name in 10 years, and certainly never at work. I tore the page out and burned it over the sink in the staff lounge. The lilies' smell vanished instantly. But that night, the child we'd lost, the one from the seizure, was tagged and sent to the morgue. Her middle name? Lillian. Sometimes I wonder if the chapel writes its own condolences before we even realize they're needed. Rule number 5. Never read the memorial book after 4 o'clock a.m., and never sit in the front pew alone. It started with a roar that wasn't a roar. Pediatric 2 was empty. We'd discharged our last bronchiolytic toddler an hour earlier. I was charting at the nurse's station when the little green dragon under the crib let out a short growl, then a long one that broke into a hollow wind-through-a-bottle rasp. I told myself the batteries were dying. I told myself anything that would keep my hands from shaking as I walked in. The crib light was off. The room smelled faintly of dust and scented wipes. The dragon lay on its side, belly unpressed, plastic mouth open like it wanted to say more. As I crouched to pick it up, a thin exhale fogged the stainless side rail from the inside. Wrong direction, wrong physics. And letters traced themselves in the condensation like a finger writing from the other side of the metal. He's in the vents. Maintenance called the station 2 minutes later. Boiler alarms fluttering high-low, backflow pressure, possible gas intrusion into east wing ducting. My brain took a second to bridge the two facts: a toy that talks without being touched, a warning in fog, and a boiler that suddenly thinks it's breathing backwards. The smell changed, sweet, chemical, faint, the kind that hides under hand sanitizer and only shows up when you swallow. I hit the zone evac button on instinct and started pulling kids out of 4, 6, and 8, dragging IV poles like stubborn pets, ripping monitor stickers off because a live toddler is better than a perfectly tracked one. The hallway air hummed with a low hiss like a whisper that never finishes the word run. When we cracked the fire door, the pressure sucked our scrubs toward the vents. A respiratory tech slammed the isolation slider and sealed the east hall. Later, the carbon monoxide dots on our badges showed a blush that shouldn't have been possible indoors. The boiler guys swore a relief valve that never jams had. Jammed. They found hairline fractures in a flex coupling no one could see without a mirror and a prayer. No one slept that day. Children did, though. Alive. Rule number 6. If a toy in PEDS activates without physical contact, speaks, roars, plays a sound, or breathes, assume it's a duct warning, not a glitch. Evacuate the nearest hallway immediately, call facilities to shut dampers and the boiler, and keep doors propped until gas readings are verified at 0 ppm. Do not silence the toy. Follow it. Children are quieter when they're safe, not when vents are. At 1:09 a.m., the code clock over Trauma 3 began counting upward on its own. 0001, 00002, 0003. The room was clean, bed made, monitor off. Every nurse learns to hate that clock. It's supposed to be a stopwatch, one we press with our own mortal hands, not something that decides time is dying without us. I checked every patient. Hands to sternum, eyes to lips, gut to monitor. All sinus, no drips running wild, no tubing kinked. Still the clock marched. 0241, 0312, 0405. I muted the desk chatter and listened to the building. The triage doors chimed open. No one walked in. The air inside the vestibule frosted as if breath hit glass in January. I wiped a circle clear and left a faint smear that looked like a handprint the size of a newborn's palm. Bay 5's elderly heart failure patient sighed in that way the dying do. The breath that lets go more than it takes in. His waveform flattened for less than a second, then came back. I called respiratory to stand by, moved the crash cart closer, and told the new grad to turn off the code clock because it was freaking everyone out. She tried. The button didn't respond to her badge or mine or the physician's. The doors chimed again and again, no bodies, just sound, until EMS shouldered through with a farmer whose lips were already ash. He made a soft puppy noise when we rolled him from the gurney. The clock hit 0711 and stopped like a finishing gun. We coded our heart failure patient 30 seconds later. No rhythm, no protest, just a quiet slip. 2 deaths in 1 minute would have broken something inside me. One did. The other didn't. We brought him back. Security later showed a gap in the vestibule camera feed precisely 7 minutes and 11 seconds long. The vendor said, "That's impossible." I don't use that word in medicine anymore. Rule number 7. When the code clock self-starts, treat it as a pre-arrival and pre-arrest alert. Reassess every patient in silence, airway, mentation, lines, drips. Move a crash cart to triage, pre-draw meds, call respiratory to stand by, and post a nurse at the doors. Do not waste seconds arguing with equipment. The clock is rarely early and never kind. Someone is about to arrive or leave. Be the reason they don't. I cut through the service corridor behind radiology because I was behind, and the long way felt like failure. Every step echoed off the sheet metal like I'd walked into a hollow bone. Halfway down, a knock paced me. A hollow, knuckle-on-ductwork tap, always a half beat behind. Right. Left. Right. I stopped. It stopped. I walked. It walked. I ran the last 10 feet and threw my shoulder at the CT door. It didn't budge. From the other side, Jeremy the tech yelled, "Push!" I did. The door gave with a shudder like something slid away from it. A smell like wet pennies rolled out. Jeremy's face had gone the color of printer paper. On the floor inside the doorway, someone had laid lead aprons in a trail, big to smaller, straight toward the gantry. The last one was the size of a toddler's bib. No one said anything. We stood there listening to the ductwork knock itself like a metronome that had learned to follow instead of lead. "Not tonight," Jeremy said into the room, soft the way you talk to a sleeping child. He gathered the aprons in reverse size order, whispering no to each one like it had asked a question. The last apron stuck to the tile. When he tugged it free, the CT gantry lit and spun on its own, table sliding in and out with no patient, no protocol loaded, like a breath practicing how to be a body again. The monitor showed static that looked like a skull, then like a small chest, then like a handprint, and blinked to a normal screen when I blinked. When the knocking finally stopped, we both laughed for the same reason people cry, because it's safer than screaming. 2 hours later, a pediatric trauma rolled in. MVA, unsecured toddler, possible head bleed. The child survived. Jeremy didn't cut through the corridor anymore, neither did I. Facilities later found a loose hanger in the duct that could account for some noise, not the steps that matched mine. Not the hand-sized rust on the inside of the CT door. Rule number 8. Never use the radiology service corridor after midnight. Take the long route, prop doors fully when passing heavy thresholds, and never step into CT, MRI when equipment cycles without a loaded protocol. If ductwork paces you, call for an escort and return by a staffed hall. Shortcuts save minutes. Ghosts tax lives. She shuffled in barefoot, hair snarled into a mat that smelled like rain. The deputy's soft restraints circled her wrists, fabric, not metal, because we were trying to be kind. "Ma'am," I said, "I'm going to take good care of you." She blinked like her eyes were full of lake light and said very clearly, "My heart's in there," and handed me her purse. I've logged wedding rings with more ceremony than I gave that purse. It thumped when it hit the counter. Not a clatter, a measured thud. I opened it narrating every step for chain of custody because training lives in your mouth even when fear lives in your hands. Inside, under a dish towel that had once been yellow, was a glass jar. Formalin has a smell you do not mistake once you've known it. The jar's liquid was dark, thick, and something pale turned within it like a slow fish. The woman fainted before I could ask another question. As we lowered her into the wheelchair, the jar rolled and tipped toward me, lid clicking against my glove. I whispered, "Sorry," the way you do when you bump a living person. The jar stopped moving. On the monitor, her heart rate printed a slow thud that matched the faint knocks from inside the purse. We paged psych. We paged the deputy. We paged the chaplain, because nurses are allowed to be superstitious when science isn't available yet. I carried the purse to the chapel and set it on the front pew. The lily's silk heads turned in a non-existent breeze. Her rhythm normalized when the purse was 10 steps from the ER. When I brought it close again, for evidence, for reason, for the part of me that insists the world has walls, her heart rate slowed until the room leaned in to hear. The ICU attending said vagal episodes can be suggestible with highly anxious patients. Maybe. The jar tapped twice when he said it, polite as a knock in a dream. The deputy found a case file weeks later, a home pathology attempt in the 1970s, a husband unwilling to bury what he couldn't afford to fix. You learn awful things in this job. You don't learn everything. Rule number 9. Any personal item that thumps, knocks in rhythm, or alters a patient's vitals when moved is evidence, not a keepsake. Double bag, label, and remove it from clinical areas immediately. Do not store it at the nurse's station or near telemetry. If moving the item normalizes the rhythm, keep it out of earshot and line of sight. Respect the chain of custody, and for your own heart, say sorry anyway. At 3:33 a.m., the Pyxis chirped and spat a morphine label we didn't request. Banks Joel, 4 mg 4. Drawer sealed. Screen idle. Printer alive like it knew a secret. We didn't have a Joel Banks on the board. Pharmacy swore no queued orders. The new grad laughed because sometimes terror wears a silly grin. The printer spit a second label. Then the drawer slid open a 1/4 inch, and the internal light pulsed like a candle starving for air. I should have pulled the plug. Instead, I pocketed the label because part of me already trusted a machine that has never once in my career tried to be creative. I prepped Trauma 2, monitor on, flush pulled, oxygen ready, and called EMS to ask if anyone was inbound with chest pain, male, possibly mid-50s. Dispatch said no. We had 2 false alarms at triage. Then a man stumbled through the sliding doors, pale as printer paper, clutching his chest with one hand and his driver's license with the other. "Banks," he panted, just once, like he needed permission to fall. He did. Onto the wheelchair, onto the gurney, into my prepared room where time had already been laid out like a track. He coded before we could even push the drug the Pyxis had chosen. We worked him hard. We worked him like anger. We worked him like love. The label in my pocket fluttered when I moved. When the rhythm strip finally steadied into something that looked like a choice, not a sentence, I remembered I hadn't actually pulled the morphine. I checked the Pyxis. It had shut its own drawer and gone to sleep. Compliance reviewed the event to the bone. The vendor said the machine can't print without an authenticated order. I believe the vendor the way I believe in the full moon, only when it's staring me in the face. We lost Joel 2 days later to a second infarct. His brother brought cupcakes to the unit because that's how some families say thank you. I threw the label away. It fluttered back out of the trash and stuck to my shoe. Rule number 10. If the Pyxis prints a patient name not on the board, treat it as an unscheduled pre-arrival. Prep the bay, call EMS dispatch with the name to cross-check, pre-stage airway and analgesia, and do not administer any drug the unit suggests without a verified order. Trust your readiness, not the machine's prophecy. The Pyxis isn't a fortune teller, but sometimes it hears footsteps before we do. There's a convex mirror at the end of Hall B that maintenance installed to help us see who's coming. At night, it's like a small moon hanging over polished linoleum, useful, harmless, and slightly too human. That night I was pushing an IV pole down the hall when I saw myself coming from the other direction. Same stride, same height, same messy bun that kept slipping out of my scrub cap. Only difference, the other me was holding an IV bag over her shoulder. The tubing dangled, coiled tight around her neck like a plastic scarf. I stopped. The reflection didn't. I thought it was fatigue, that shift sickness where 20 hours start to feel like one long day. But when my reflection lifted her hand, blood shimmered between her fingers where the spike of the IV should be. My skin itched exactly where hers bled. The crash alarm sounded from room 10. I turned from the mirror and ran, because that's what training does to fear. Inside, our COPD patient had wrapped his oxygen tubing around his own throat. Eyes rolled white, pulse a flicker. We cut him free. He lived. When I went back to the mirror later, the bruise on my neck was the color of old IV tubing. That was the night we learned Hall B's mirror doesn't show what is. It shows what's next. Rule number 11. Treat the end hall mirror as an early warning system, not decoration. When it reflects an action you have not taken, assume it predicts a patient 2 rooms away. Verify airway, breathing, and lines for all occupants before dismissing it. Never ignore a reflection that bleeds before you do. That glass keeps its own chart. His name was Wade. Big hands, oil-black fingernails, skin cracked from years under the Oklahoma sun. The paramedics said the rig crushed his arm. I said I'd seen worse. I lied. We irrigated the wound. The sink hissed, then shut off by itself. Water gurgled backward through the drain, thick and slow. The smell hit first, diesel and rusted pennies. Then something bubbled up. A film of black oil that spread across the basin until it shimmered like a mirror made of night. In that mirror, a face blinked. Not Wade's. Too young, mouth open like it was still calling for help. The suction canister beside me rattled. Its hose lifted off the hook and swayed toward the sink as though it wanted to drink. I slammed the clamp. The suction line strained against my grip, then dropped limp. The oil slid down the drain and was gone. We stabilized Wade, but when he finally drifted under anesthesia, his lips moved. "Don't let me fall," he whispered. The monitor beeped once and flatlined for 3 seconds before jumping back. Facilities later dismantled the trap. Inside, they found a braid of hair and a brass charm stamped with the initials of a 20-year-old who'd been lost down a well on Wade's site 5 years earlier. The brass was polished clean. Rule number 12. When oil backs up through a clinical drain, treat the plumbing as live ground, not waste line. Kill the water, seal the trap, and keep hands clear until engineering certifies 0 hydrocarbon presence. Assign a sitter for any oil field patient until the lines run clear. Some pressure belongs to the earth, and she takes back what isn't bled respectfully. We admitted her under a 72-hour hold, barefoot, soaked, smelling of pond water. The sheriff said she'd been standing in the middle of County 12, whispering to the asphalt. She told me, calm as prayer, "He's standing in the drain." Her pupils were huge. Her pulse thrummed against the restraint cuff. I thought meth, psychosis, exhaustion, something measurable. Then we heard it. Boots on wet concrete coming from under the floor. The sound passed beneath the gurney and stopped by the wall vent. The vent rattled once, like knuckles on tin. The woman smiled. "Told you," she said. The deputy laughed, half nervous. His laugh cut off when a single wet footprint appeared next to his own. Heel, arch, toes. The tiles shimmered with a sheen that dried into a salt ring. The drain gurgled again, lower this time, like a voice trapped under water. I grabbed a linen hamper and rolled it over the grate. The noise dulled instantly. When we moved the hamper hours later, its bottom was soaked through and smelled like algae. No one uses that room now. The grate's still covered. Rule number 13. Any vent or floor drain that produces footsteps or breath must be covered, logged, and reported. Keep linens or carts over it until maintenance confirms it's sealed. Never leave a patient alone who mentions the man in the drain. Whatever he is, he listens for names, and the tile remembers voices. Family waiting rooms are liminal spaces. Hope on one wall, dread on the other. I was getting coffee for a mother whose son was in surgery when the clock above her started ticking too loudly. Not faster, just louder, like each second was hitting metal instead of air. Then the second hand jammed at 12 and kept twitching in place. Tick, 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 tick. The woman looked up. "Every time that happens," she said, "someone calls with bad news." I took the clock down to change the battery. It kept ticking in my hands, metal on metal. When I opened the back, a small black beetle crawled out, shiny and perfect, a raised 4 etched on its back like engraving. It walked up my glove and disappeared into my sleeve. At that exact moment, the OR called. Massive bleed. They were losing her boy. He died 4 minutes later. The clock started again by itself. The beetle never came out. Sometimes when I pass that room, I hear a soft mechanical tick that doesn't match the clock's rhythm, like something counting time by its own rules. Rule number 14. When a waiting room clock stalls and ticks in place, clear the area and prepare the family gently for loss. Do not handle the clock bare-handed. Replace it completely. Never restart it. Some seconds refuse to move forward without a life to carry them. The power failed at 2:06 a.m. A clean cut, no flicker. In the dark, monitors clicked silent one by one. Then came the 5 seconds we all hate, the breath-holding void before the generator catches. In those 5 seconds, I saw movement in the medroom glass, a ripple, like heat shimmer, except cold. When the lights roared back, every narcotic drawer blinked, access granted. No badges had scanned, no hands had moved. We performed a count. Every vial present, every seal unbroken. But the fridge thermometer had recorded an impossible swing, from 36 to 66 to 36 again, within a single minute. During that minute, 3 patients screamed awake, eyes unfocused, arms reaching for things that weren't there. One called out her husband's name, dead 5 years. Another said, "It's too bright," though the hall was half dark. The next morning, security pulled fingerprints from the inside of the fridge glass. Not adult, not infant, just wrong. Too long, too thin, as if someone had pressed from the other side of the temperature. We replaced the bulbs, the drawers, the locks. We still count twice after every outage. Rule number 15. After any blackout or generator delay, reset all medroom systems before resuming care. Discard narcotics exposed to unexplained temperature swings and reassess every conscious patient for sudden personality or sensory change. The building breathes different air in those 5 seconds. Let it exhale before you inhale. It was supposed to be a normal transfusion night. 2 traumas, 1 GI bleed, 1 cross-match pending. I was restocking when a white cooler appeared under my desk. No requisition slip, no carrier signature, just there, like someone had rolled it under while I wasn't looking. The Red Cross sticker was faded, edges curling. I lifted the lid and saw 4 units of blood, labels yellowed and peeling, the kind we phased out a decade ago. Expiration dates: 2013. The ice packs were half melted and sticky, coated with a slimy residue that smelled faintly sweet, like old antifreeze. The bag at the top had a handwritten note tucked beneath it. For Wade. No one on the floor was named Wade. I stood, ready to page blood bank. That's when the cooler lid snapped shut, hard enough to catch my finger. It didn't fall. It snapped, like something inside had pulled it closed. Then, from behind me, a voice said, "It's mine." I spun around. The hallway was empty. Security footage later showed no one entering or leaving the ER for 12 minutes surrounding that moment. The next day, a call came from a small rural hospital 80 miles west. They'd lost a trauma patient named Wade the night before. His blood type matched the units in my cooler. Their courier reported that the shipment vanished en route. Facilities disposed of the cooler as hazardous waste. But 2 nights later, it was back under my desk. Lid shut, condensation dripping onto the tile. We finally sealed it in the morgue freezer. 3 weeks later, the power there failed for 10 minutes. When we opened the freezer, the cooler was gone. And that's why our chain of custody logs now have triple signatures. Rule number 16. If a blood cooler appears without verified routing slips, do not open it twice. Bag, seal, and log as lost chain of custody material. Never assume it's new stock, no matter how fresh it looks. Blood carries its destination, and sometimes it remembers where it never arrived. Every nurse writes on Bay 4's whiteboard. Allergies, goals, plan of care, simple things. But about 6 months ago, the board started writing back. The first time, I thought it was a prank. Someone had scrawled, "Check the sock." My patient was a repeat seizure admit, unconscious and on Ativan. I lifted his blanket, pulled off his left sock, and a small plastic baggie slid out. White powder, enough to kill him twice. I laughed nervously and erased the board. 5 minutes later, it wrote itself again. Same marker, same messy handwriting. This time, don't turn him right. He started seizing again when I rolled him that direction to suction. We flipped him left. The seizure stopped instantly. The monitor stabilized. I erased it again. The board stayed blank for hours, until the next shift. When the new nurse walked in, it said, "Tell her thank you." We replaced that board. The new one wrote its first words 3 days later. Still here. The handwriting looked weaker, like someone losing strength. No one talks while in that bay now. We just listen. Rule number 17. Never erase unsolicited writing on a patient board until discharge. Treat it as part of the patient's chart and document the message verbatim. If the board warns or corrects you, comply before questioning it. Bay 4 is communicative, not malicious. Treat it with the respect of an unseen consultant. He came from a rodeo outside Tulsa, 22, bright-eyed, ribs shattered from a fall. He kept asking, "Where's my hat?" I promised to find it. I walked out to the Sallyport where the ambulance had parked. His hat was lying under the wheel chock, crushed, the brim folded like wings. When I picked it up, a long strand of hair clung to the felt. Blonde, but longer than his crew cut, longer than anyone's should have been. I tried to pull it off. It stuck. Wrapped once, twice, 3 times around my glove, then my sleeve, then my neck. Tightened. I dropped the hat and stumbled back, clawing at the invisible thread digging into my throat. The world tilted. The air whistled. My vision tunneled. Then, snip. The trauma shears in my hand closed without my command. The hair fell away, dull gray now, not blonde. Inside, the patient's monitor flatlined. We opened his gown. A thin cut traced across his chest, shaped like a loop of rope. Beneath it, a small bleeder we hadn't caught, barely visible, was leaking into the muscle. We clamped it, packed it, and got him back. Later, the janitor found the strand of hair tangled around my shears. It had fused to the metal like melted fishing line. Rule number 18. Anything that attaches itself uninvited, hair, string, cloth, thread, treat as biologic hazard and discard in bio after sealing twice. Never bring personal effects past the yellow line into the trauma bay. The dead have ways of lassoing the living back into their stories. Don't let them. Our hospital sits 10 miles from the nearest set of active tracks. You can still hear freight trains faintly on clear nights, way off toward the grain elevator. But that night, the horn came from under us. It started as a low hum that vibrated the crash cart wheels. The monitor screens trembled. Then came the whistle, long, mournful, distant yet right beneath our feet. Every vent rattled. Dispatch called at that exact moment. Pedestrian versus train, north of County Line Road. Unconfirmed fatality. We prepped for trauma. No ambulance came. 5 minutes later, a pickup pulled up to the bay. 2 men climbed out, one dragging the other by his armpits, screaming, "He heard the train!" The man on the ground was alive, barely, both legs shredded, eyes open. He whispered, "It's still down there." We stabilized what we could. He coded before sunrise. After the autopsy, the pathologist found embedded iron flakes in his clothing. No train had passed on County Line that night. The rail company confirmed. No scheduled freight since 11 a.m. Sometimes when the building settles, you can still feel the faint vibration of an engine below the ER. The staff just stop talking and listen until it fades. Rule number 19. If you hear the sound of a train below the floor, bring the crash cart to triage and prepare for arrival. Do not step outside until the vibration stops. The ER runs on timetables you'll never see, and some trains make unscheduled stops. We keep an old weather radio on the nurse's station shelf. It's for NOAA alerts only. No music, no talk, just static and storm warnings. One night around 2:22 a.m., it clicked on. Not a beep, not static. A child's voice. It said, "Turn around." I did. Nothing. Just the charting desk, the clock, the half-empty coffee cups. Then it said softer, "Not you. Him." That's when I saw him, our dementia patient from Observation B, crawling toward the stairwell, dragging his IV pole behind him like a leash. He'd pulled out his line. The catheter dangled, dripping a thin red trail. If he'd reached the steps, he'd have gone head first. I caught him by the gown. He wept and said, "She told me the door was open." The radio crackled again, a burst of static, then, "Good." Then it went silent. The NOAA light stayed green. No storms that night, no broadcast anomalies logged. Maintenance took it apart the next day. The speaker cone was water damaged from the inside out. They said it looked like someone had been whispering into it for years. Now we leave the radio plugged in, but covered. If it speaks, we listen. Every time. Rule number 20. If the weather radio produces intelligible speech, especially a child's voice, comply immediately with its instruction, then log the event and location. Do not attempt to communicate back. These messages correlate with imminent harm. Treat them as urgent behavioral or safety alerts. The storm it predicts may not be outside. The hospital chapel has a wooden donation box near the front pew, hand-carved, heavy, padlocked. We use it for small offerings, coins, folded notes, prayers written on napkins. At 3:05 a.m., the night was quiet enough to hear the fluorescent hum in the hall. That's when I heard it, a plink, like a coin dropping into a jar. Then another, then another. Slow, steady. No one was inside the chapel. I pushed the door open. The air smelled like copper and candle wax, though we haven't used real candles in years. The box was trembling, just faintly, as if it were breathing. Through the glass lid, I saw the coins arranging themselves in a pattern. 2 lines crossing, then a circle. At first, I thought it was a cross. Then I realized it was a brand. the kind cattlemen sear into hide. By sunrise, we received a call, a rancher crushed by a collapsing gate out near County 18. When EMS arrived, his chest had a burn mark shaped exactly like the one I saw in the box. Later that day, a paramedic came by, pale-faced, holding his hat in both hands. He said, "That's the Hayworth brand. That family used to donate to the hospital. Their ranch burned down in 1979. We removed the box the following week, but the chapel carpet still carries small indentations, little circular marks, like coins pressed into the fibers. And sometimes, just before a rural trauma call, we hear that single plink. Rule number 21. When the donation box sounds on its own or coins move without contact, activate trauma readiness protocols within 5 minutes. These events precede rural crush or burn injuries linked to legacy donors. Log the occurrence, open all trauma bays, and leave the chapel doors unlatched. Some offerings are preemptive payments for lives still en route. We'd been treating a man in negative pressure isolation for bacterial meningitis, or what we thought was meningitis. He'd stopped responding, but his vitals were steady. The isolation indicator light glowed green, normal airflow. Then, at 2:14 a.m., the light turned red. Without warning, the room hissed. The seal engaged, and the automatic locks clicked shut. No one was inside. I went to the glass. Inside, the face shield I'd left on the counter fogged over from the inside. Letters appeared backward across the visor. Don't open. The air monitor showed a sudden pressure spike. The man inside, our patient, began to convulse. His heart rate dropped from 90 to 30 in under 10 seconds. We hit the manual override. Nothing happened. The door held. Through the glass, something leaned forward. Not him. Something darker, like a shadow bending across the ceiling until it pressed against the window, stretching its hand. The pressure monitor maxed out. Then, suddenly, dropped to 0. 5 minutes later, the lights reset. The seal released on its own. He was alive, breathing evenly, as if nothing had happened. The face shield was spotless. Facilities found no malfunction. The airflow records showed 2 people in the room at the time, even though the second sensor registered below human temperature. We moved him upstairs that morning. The isolation room is still sealed, permanently. Rule number 22. If an isolation room seals autonomously and displays written warnings, do not override within the first 5 minutes. Observe through glass, verify pressure equalization, and document all visual anomalies. Treat self-sealing as an intentional safety response, not a fault. When the room warns you, obey. It knows what it's keeping in or out. Her name was Marisol. She'd been gone a year. Car wreck, fog, County Road 9. We left her locker untouched. It still smelled faintly of eucalyptus and hand cream. On the anniversary of her death, I walked past and heard the combination dial spinning. 2 turns right, 1 left, 1 right, the exact pattern she used. Then click. The door creaked open on its own. Inside was a single sticky note pressed to the back wall, pinned with a heart-shaped magnet. Don't let him walk. That same hour in Bay 3, a detox patient was trying to leave AMA. He insisted he was fine, swore he'd drive home, said his kids were waiting. I don't know why, but I listened to the note. I called security to hold him for a cardiac recheck. He seized right there at the door. Massive arrhythmia. If he'd made it to his truck, he'd have died before hitting the ignition. When I went back, the locker door was closed again. The dial was set to zeros. The note was gone. We keep her locker locked now, but every October it smells like eucalyptus again. Rule number 23. If a deceased staff member's locker or personal space reopens itself and presents a written warning, follow the instruction immediately before verification. Document the event after the danger has passed, not before. These notes are not superstition, they're staff communication across the veil. Respect the continuity of care. It was 5:02 a.m., late winter, the kind of cold that clings to your bones even indoors. But that morning, the frost came inside. It started as glitter along the hallway floor, tiny silver crystals forming from nothing, melting under my shoes, then reforming behind me. We had a hypothermic rancher in room 12, found half frozen out by his pickup, body temperature in the 80s. His wife wouldn't leave his side. She kept rubbing his ring finger, whispering, "Stay with me." I warmed IV fluids under my arms. The monitor beeped irregularly, the line jagged. Then the vent began to pour visible fog. Not steam, fog. Cold enough to sting my lips when I breathed. The frost climbed up the bed frame like lace. His skin turned blue-white again, the kind of color that makes your heart tighten. I held his hand between mine. "Come on, old man," I said. "It's not your time." He opened his eyes halfway and whispered, "Under the ice." The vent stopped. The frost receded. The room warmed by 10 degrees in under a minute. He survived. His wife cried into my shoulder until sunrise. When she left, she said, "You spoke loud enough for him to hear you through the ice." I still don't know what she meant. The frost never returned. But that room stays 2 degrees colder than the rest of the floor. Rule number 24. If frost forms indoors without a temperature drop elsewhere, provide direct manual warmth before mechanical. Speak to the patient. Human voice penetrates where machines can't. Physical and verbal contact stabilize metabolic return faster than forced air alone. Some cold doesn't come from the weather. It comes from halfway across. Every Sunday morning, the chaplain leaves a small glass of water on the piano in the chapel. He says it's for whoever's thirsty. We smile and let him. One dawn, around 5:40, I passed by and noticed ripples moving across the surface. Small, concentric, deliberate. No footsteps, no AC vent, no draft. The ripples stopped, then started again. Short, short, long, short, long. It looked like Morse code. I wrote it down on a napkin, not really knowing why. One of the paramedics on break, a ham radio hobbyist, took one look and said, "It spells, stay there." At that exact time, an ambulance was backing into the wrong bay, the outer one that leads across open ground. It was 28 degrees outside, frost on the asphalt. Their patient was a STEMI. Seconds counted. The driver was about to roll him across the lot to save time. We waved him down, redirected to the covered bay. The cardiologist said later that the cold air shock could have induced arrest before they reached the cath lab. When I checked the piano again, the glass was still. No condensation, just one perfect ring of frost on the wood, shaped like a halo. Rule number 25. If the chapel water moves without disturbance, interpret it before acting. Document the pattern, alert paramedics, and hold patient transfers until its message is clear. Treat the chapel's water as a silent code system. It speaks only when a life is moving toward preventable loss. Always listen to the still surface. It ripples for a reason.